Hi YouTube, this is Shaker, and today in my video I'll be talking about the book Essentialism by McKeown, and I will first discuss what the book was about and talk about make a summary about the book, and after I'll give some thoughts and a review of the book. So Essentialism is a book that was written by McKeown, and it was published in 2014. Now, the main idea of the book is that only once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all, to stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter. To become an essentialist, the author starts off by discussing what the mindset of an essentialist is. The first point to keep in mind is to understand that you have a choice, right? A lot of times when there's a message on the phone or a notification, we're walking out, we open up the fridge, we see some chocolate or anything. All these stimuli, they sort of, almost force us to take action, right? But the author says is that we have a choice, right? And once we realize that we have a choice to act or not act, that sort of gives us freedom. And so the first point is to understand that we have a choice. The second point is to understand that most of the things in our life is probably what he calls noise, right? So most of the things in our lives probably don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Author says is that by understanding that most of the things are irrelevant, you give yourself sort of the freedom to sort of focus and pay attention to the things that are important, right? Things that are going to have like a huge impact relative to everything else. The third point the author makes is that they're trade-offs, right? Or there's, for every choice that we make, there's a positive and there's a negative. Whenever we commit ourselves to anything or make a choice, we sort of have to accept sort of the pros and cons of it. And so by realizing that everything has costs associated with it, we start to become more aware of the choices we do make. And so, we want to make choices that give us the best return. And so those three things encompass and are part of the mindset of an essentialist. So once you've sort of, developed a mindset, what you want to do after is identify what is important. So how do we do that? How do we identify what is important to us? Well, the author has a couple tips. One tip is that we look back, right? So if you look back in your life, you look back, you probably lived for a couple decades on this earth, or maybe only one. But if you've been on this earth for some time, you have a lot of experiences. And if you look back on those experiences, you realize that there's some themes, right? Some points that have sort of come up again and again, right? Maybe you have an interest in cooking, or maybe you have an interest in sort of the arts, or whatever it may be, right? Maybe there's some values that, come up again and again. Like, for example, family has been really important to you throughout your life. So by looking back, we can identify sort of patterns, and those patterns can tell us what is truly important to us. So that's one way of identifying what's important. Another point is to escape. So when we escape this sort of like surrounding that we have, right? We escape sort of the stimuli that are forced upon us, right? So this escape, maybe it's a road trip. Maybe you go solo, drive up somewhere north or wherever. Maybe it's like you give yourself 20 minutes to meditate, right? Or maybe you go for a small vacation. Whatever it may be, the point of escaping is to give yourself some time so you can think for yourself. And by thinking for yourself, hopefully some thoughts and ideas may come across your mind, and you may have some sort of realization of what is truly important to you. So those are 2 points on what's important. So once you've identified what's important, then what you can do is sort of eliminate what's not important. So in regards to eliminating what is not important, one was uncommit, right? And the author says is that if something's not important to you anymore, then we should uncommit to it. That doesn't seem like a crazy proposition. But what the author wants to bring our attention to is to the sort of like our psychological tendency to overvalue things that we already have, right? So say you bought a shirt, or you bought some articles of clothing. You may not wear them, and they may not be valuable to you anymore, but you probably won't be willing to throw them away, at least for the most of us, right? And what the author says is that once we've purchased something, or once we've made a commitment, it can be hard to sort of back out of it, for the simple fact that we've already made the commitment, right? And so a good question to ask ourselves is that, say if we hadn't bought that piece or item, right? Or if we hadn't made that commitment, would we be willing to spend our money or time to make that commitment or purchase that item again, right? And so that sort of objective sort of way of thinking may help you realize that, maybe what you have is truly not important to you and maybe you should get rid of it. Okay, so now once you've eliminated things, the final part is to execute. So how do you execute on things that are important to you? Well, there's a bunch of tips again, but one important tip I found, the first one, is the idea of a buffer, right? So in the book, the author discusses basically a study where it showed that people constantly underestimate the sort of time it will take them to complete a task. And what the author says is that by giving yourself extra time to complete that task, maybe like a buffer space time, what you do is, first of all, decrease the psychological stress on you, right? And the second thing is that you will allow yourself, give yourself more time to complete it so you can do a good job, right? And so by giving yourself buffer time, it makes it more likely that you'll go through with whatever plan we're going to execute. The second point is about progress. And I think this is probably one of the most important points in the book. And the author discusses the importance of progress. Now, progress is a great motivator, right? And so you probably heard of a lot of different ideas of motivation, the stick or the carrot, right? But the author makes a point about how progress is probably one of the best motivators, right? And I agree with that point. So once you've, like whatever task or whatever goal you have, but once you made small amount of progress, that progress is probably going to be the best source of motivation for you, right? That sort of like energy you get, after you've made a small step towards your goal, right? Maybe lost the first pound on your weight loss journey or whatever it may be. That sort of initial success will be a great motivation. And so whenever you, want to execute on whatever is important to you, make those small first steps, right? And those first steps, the first successes will serve as motivation to go forward. The third point is in regards to focus, right? And what the author says is that one thing to keep in mind is focus on the present, right? And that's often incorporated in advice such as, when people tell you to meditate, right? Or different mindful practices, right? And that sort of focusing on the present can help you, be more efficient and get stuff done. So that was basically the summary of the book. And, and again, in the book, the author talks about the importance of having, an essentialist mindset, and then how you can sort of execute that by first sort of identifying what's important and then separating it from what is not important, and then how you can eliminate the things that are not important to you, and finally by some tips on how to execute on things that are important to us. Okay, so now I will cover some of my thoughts on the book. And initially, the reason why I picked this book was because I was interested in this sort of idea of essentialism, right? On social media and everywhere, you see people succeeding at all aspects of life, right? Seemingly some of your friends have got everything in order. And so that kind of makes you think that, I got to do everything all at once too, right? You got to get a new house, get a mansion, get like a 6-figure job, perfect body, perfect everything, right? So the idea in this book and in another book I read, The One Thing by Gary Keller, it was very much a contrarian idea to what we see, espoused to us in the media. And that contrarian idea is that instead of trying to do everything, you focus on something that's important to you, right? Just a couple things that are important to you and eliminate the rest. And so I was interested in reading this book to learn about what, this author has to say about that idea, right? Their specific take. And so by hopefully exposing myself to a different viewpoint, I can sort of get a deeper understanding of how to apply this principle and this idea to my life. Now, based on that, my sort of expectations were, they were a bit low, considering I already read a bit about the idea. Though I was hoping that the author may have some, a really good different perspective. Now, on that same point, I felt like my expectations were they were met, but they were not exceeded a lot. And to be fair to the author, I think the author did a great job of, talking about the subject in general and discussing various points. But I think to someone, someone who's probably already read a bit on this subject, I think this felt like more of an introductory book. And so I think although it wasn't great for me right now, I think if I didn't know anything about the subject, I think this book would have been amazing. And I think the ideas in this book are really great. Now, something I did really like in this book, again, is first of all the author's sort of emphasis and importance on play, right? So play as a topic, play as in you're playing games, or you're just being playful, right? The author dedicated a chapter to the importance of that. And I think as we get older, right, rightfully so, in a lot of aspects of our life, we're told to be more serious or more professional, and that has its place. But I think in our lives and in our society, one thing that doesn't get enough emphasis is play. And so in this book, the author dedicates a section to that idea and why it's important. I think that was one good point. Another really good point, I thought, was sort of the author's overall sort of outline of the book, right? And how sort of the author detailed the different points and the structure. So the author started off by talking about the general mindset of essentialism, and then went on to talk about how to identify what's important again, and then how to eliminate what's not important, and so on. And I think that great sort of structure to the book really helps you not only get a understanding of sort of the mental aspects of essentialism, but also gives you like a practical sort of understanding of how to apply that to your life. And so I think that structure was really good part of the book. Now, some things that I didn't like was, I think this may just be for me, or this may just have been my experience, but I felt like in some of the later chapters in the book, the ideas were maybe a bit dry. I felt like in the sense that some sections I felt like could have been summarized in a page or two, but they were expanded, such as on the chapter of saying no. And to be fair to the author, I feel like these sort of ideas are so complex and so sort of almost subjective that you never know what a certain reader might like, or what may be new to them. And so in defense of the author, I think it's good that they included different perspectives on the same topic. But personally speaking, for me, I felt like that sort of took away from the enjoyment I had in the book, because I felt like it was a bit repetitive. Now, the final point I want to say is, who do I recommend this book to? I feel like this book would be a great recommendation to someone who doesn't really know about the idea, right? Hasn't really been exposed to like essentialism or minimalism. And I think that this book would be great for those people. And it serves as a great introduction and has, some great tips in it. And that was sort of my take on the book. Let me know what you think. That's it for the video. I just want to thank you guys for watching it. Let me know what you thought about the video, what you think about the book. Maybe there's some ideas you liked. But if you did like the video, please press the like button and subscribe. And thank you. Bye.